Hey, what's going on, y'all? I'm gonna show you how to make smooth vintage samples. So first I'll let you hear the sample. So with something like this, it's all about sound selection. So first I'm gonna start off with an organ. I'm just playing 7th chords and I'm adding notes in between to just fill out the chords a lot more. The effects I'm using on almost every single sound is just an EQ to get out the lows, some RC20 retro color, and all I'm doing is making sure the wobble is on stereo, and I'm cutting out low lows. And then vintage verb, I have a preset I use called vintage verb, and really all I'm doing is bringing down the mix, bringing up the low cut on the reverb. Then I'm adding a little high sparkle sound. All that is a preset from Farfisa. And all I'm doing is playing really high notes. So you can see here I'm playing C sharp, F sharp, and A sharp, which are all notes that are in that F sharp major 7 chord that I'm playing for the main melody. Then it's really important to always have drums in your old school samples. This will just make it feel like a real song and not just like a sample. So for this, I'm cutting out the lows, putting on vintage verb, bringing up the low cut. And all I'm doing is I chopped it up to make it fill the pockets that I wanted to, and I'm still having the hi-hat hit on that too because I want to have that emphasis on that downbeat. And all that sounds like with the chords and the sparkle is like this. Then this is where you really are going to get your real vintage sound from. If you have a real guitar or any real instrument, I don't care what you play, it could be a kazoo, anything. If you have a real instrument, please play that because that's going to give a really human feel to the sound. But also you can use VSTs and still get a really good vintage sound. But I play guitar, so of course I'm going to add some live guitar. So all I'm doing for this is I'm freestyling in the key, so I'm in C sharp, major pentatonic, that's all I'm playing on my guitar, and I'm playing the chords on my guitar. And I have a lot of different parts. I'm using a bunch of different guitar tones because you want to make it sound really unique and like there's always something new to catch on to. So here's some more guitar with the rest of the sample. Then of course, next I'm adding in a bass, and one thing you can do to make your samples sound a lot more like they're real songs is don't have them all play right at the 5 beat mark or the 9 beat mark. Have this little intro. So as you can see, right before it goes into the bass, I have another note right here just to make it seem like it's not a really static sample. It gives it a lot more movement. Next is my favorite part of this, and that's adding your own vocals. You can really add your vocals on any kind of sample, but for these, you want to make sure it's really catchy and you're not doing too much with it. So here, all I'm singing is like, I've been so high, you've been on my mind lately. You know, that kind of stuff. You know, it's something that's really kind of catchy and it kind of fits the mood of the rest of the sample. For the effects, beyond a lot of auto-tune, I have an EQ to cut out the lows, EQ to kind of get rid of those harsh frequencies, and then I have a compressor, and all that's doing is making sure that all these sounds are really crushed in together. Then one of my favorite plugins, it's called the Speaker X64, and I always bring down the dry wet knob a good bit, and the drive, sometimes I put it up, but for this I didn't. Then I bring the speaker model down. This really just EQs the sound. And then I'm putting on a fruity chorus. This will just give it a somewhat underwater effect. And of course, vintage verb, using my vintage verb preset and bringing up that low cut so there's no muddy reverb. Then for this, please layer your vocals. It'll make it sound like there's maybe not a choir, but it sounds like there's a lot more fullness to the sound rather than just having one sound, and make sure you're panning them from left to right. So here's that.
I've been so high, I've been so high. Open your eyes, you've been on my mind lately.
Then to add some variation, I did it an octave lower with a lot less energy.
I've been so high, I've been so high. Open your eyes, you've been on my mind lately.
Then really all I did was add in some keys from Keyscape. All that's doing is adding some more fullness into the sound, and then I'm going to my master chain. One of my favorite plugins to use is Murder Melodies. You get this with the Slate Digital subscription. Not sponsored. I'm not big enough to be getting no money from that. But I just used the wide detail preset, and all I'm doing is bringing up the heat, clarity, and ensemble knob. And really all this is doing, you could somewhat replicate it if you just put on a chorus for the ensemble and an EQ for the high frequencies, which is all this little diamond button is doing. And then also heat is really just a distortion / saturation knob. Then I'm doing an EQ to give it a little more clarity by boosting the presence. And then again, the speaker thing, but I'm bringing it down a lot in terms of dry wet. And I don't want this to add too much sound into it, but it just gives it somewhat of a vintage feel. Then of course the limiter to make it sound a little more squashed, and you're basically done.